Good evening, everyone. My name is Warwick Hadfield, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the first ever regional forum in a national series of free public discussions called One Just World, Think, Talk, Act on Global Poverty and Development. Now, before we get too far into the night, the first thing I have to do is offer an apology from Bob McMullen. He was really looking forward to being here this evening, but he was suddenly called away to Cairo, as distinct from Cairo, to work on the reconstruction of Gaza. But we're pleased to have in his place a member for Cairo, as distinct from Cairo, Richard Marles, who has informed me he's a stinking sports follower. So he's got my vote. This series is an initiative sponsored by the Australian Government's International Development Agency, AusAid, in partnership with the International Women's Development Agency and World Vision Australia. And these organisations are joined by a university partner in each city, and here in Geelong, it's Deakin University, and in particular, the Alfred Deakin Institute, which is relatively new to the university, but as locals, if you get the chance to visit it, it's absolutely fantastic. I had a brief guided tour the other day of the Alfred Deakin's library and other things like that, and it's a wonderful addition to our city. So it's great to see you all here tonight. I hope your cars are not being buffeted outside by the winds. It's very brave of you to come out tonight, and your VCs will be presented to you as you leave the door. This forum is on the world food crisis, and it's titled, "Is Food Only for Those Who Can Afford It, or Is It a Human Right?" I also want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Respecting the rights and contributions of Indigenous peoples has been an increasingly important strand in international efforts to promote the rights of all people in and through development. The One Just World series is about providing a space for ideas and conversations about some of the big development issues and how these might be addressed. To enable you to question people directly involved in development in one way or another. You can also make your own suggestions and find out more about ways in which you can contribute and, most importantly, get involved. Tonight, the focus is on food, or perhaps the lack of it, and what we can do to solve the situation. This came as a shock to me when I read this. In Australia, food prices have risen by between 40 and 100% over the last 3 years, causing real problems, as you can imagine, for individuals and families. I've got a son who's studying at UQ and trying to get by, and I get the phone calls every now and then, "Dad, can I have some money to buy a pizza?" But what we have here is nothing to what's been happening in the world's poorest countries, where millions go hungry. Hear this, 800 million people simply don't have enough to eat, and the same number again don't know where their next meal is coming from if they're lucky enough to get the last one. And we all know the long-term effects of malnutrition, of course, poor health, shorter lifespans, maternal health problems, and developmental problems for young children. Now, the irony in all this is there is enough food for the world, in the world, for everyone, if only it could be more evenly distributed. We in well-off countries overindulge, and you've only got to look at the waistlines in the shopping centres to know that, while in other countries, as we've said, people have none. So this brings us back to the question we're asking tonight. Is food only for those who can afford it, or is it a basic human right? Our government, through its international development arm, AusAid, is very aware of the world food issues, driven by last year's global food price spike, and of course, climate change. Now, our speakers, Richard Marles, Alice Pollard and David Lansley, will explore some of the issues and challenges and how we can best help the people and communities who find themselves in this desperate situation. Our speakers will each talk for about 10 to 12 minutes. Then there will be a brief discussion between the panellists before we turn the floor over to you for questions, contributions and responses. Before we get to that, I want to welcome to the podium the host of tonight's forum, the member for Cairo, as distinct from Cairo, Richard Marles. Now, he was elected as the member for Cairo in the House of Reps in November 2007, and in a short time he's built up a pretty splendid record. He's the chair of the House of Representatives Standing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders Affairs Committee, a member of the Economics Committee, and a member of the Employment and Workplace Relations Committee. In a previous life, and we all have plenty of those, Richard has been ACTU Assistant Secretary, Federal Assistant Secretary of the Transport Workers Union, and a member of the National Occupational Health and Safety Commission, and led the ACTU's work on occupational health and safety. He also led an innovative program of cooperation between the Australian and Papua New Guinea union movements. He's a long-time Geelong local, so please make him welcome Richard Marles.